what can we do, and what do we need to know in order to not to exclude but integrate people with sensory disability more? No? How can we educate ourselves? If just in a nutshell, let's say, what would you suggest, Amy?
Okay, that's a very important question because it's very important to include people with disability to ensure that the results truly are applicable to them. Um, yeah, if you know that they are deaf or hard of hearing, contact them in writing. Um, Ask them when you first contact them about their preferred communication method and accessibility requirements. In general, when you're with people with a hearing loss, a quiet, well-lit environment is ideal. No background noise, and avoid backlighting. For example, if the sun is shining through the window and you have your back to that window and you have the deaf person facing you, your face is going to be dark. It's going to be difficult for them to read your lips. So make sure that you're not backlit.
Welcome to the Culture, Communication and Care Spotlight with Mark Gibson and Nur Ferrante, a space within the Patient Voice and Linguistic Validation Café podcast where health communication, cultural sensitivity and diversity are given voice cross-culturally through experiences of patients and professionals in the field.
This episode is sponsored by GRC, putting the patient at the heart of research globally.
Our guest today is Amy Dara Hochberg, North American health communication researcher and medical and academic translator based in Barcelona, Spain. Discover her unique story as a person with sensory disability and her multiple gifts for languages and health communication. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Culture, Care and Communication Spotlight. And today we have Amy Dara Hochberg. Thank you so much for joining Mark and I. We really, really appreciate it. Today's episode is special for us because we are focusing on sensory disability. And Amy, it's really a colleague and a person that we really admire because of her, let's say, ability to overcome any difficulties that her situation as a person with hearing impairment. Well, she will have to tell us how she prefers to call her hearing disability. But she has overcome these difficulties. She speaks many languages. She's a researcher. She's a health communication expert. And we're really, really excited to find out more about her trajectory. So, Amy, really, again, super welcome. And we would like to start by asking you a bit about you. We have the captions on. She asked us to have captions. So please, any person with hearing disability as well, we are trying to include you as best as we can and understand your needs. So, well, Amy, tell
I
us a bit about
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So you want me to first address the terminology for hearing disability?
Yes, maybe we can start with that, and then you can tell us a bit about yourself and your personal experience and also professional one.
Okay, so starting with the terminology for hearing disabilities, generally hearing loss is a general term for any diminished ability to hear. The term can be confusing when it comes to those who were born with reduced or no hearing, since they didn't lose it. But the normal hearing wasn't there to begin with, and in any case, it's the term that we use in English.
Mhm.
And I prefer to call myself deaf.
Deaf. Okay.
And in English, there are two forms of deaf, the term deaf. I am lower D deaf, and that is more general. And it usually describes severe to profound hearing loss. Deaf with a capital D refers to the community with its own cultural identity and the exclusive use of sign language. And many of these people reject hearing devices and speech therapy. They prefer not to speak at all. I do not know sign language. I don't use it. I don't know it. Maybe just a few words here and there, but it wouldn't make sense for me to use it
Mhm.
because it's not even useful for a conversation.
Mhm.
So I'm lower D deaf. Other terms are hard of hearing. Hard of hearing generally describe mild to moderate hearing loss. And it tends to be the preferred term by older people who lost their hearing later. At least in the United States, that's the case. And hearing impaired was once recommended as the preferred term by the NIH, the National Institute of Health, in the 1970s, around 50 years ago. But it has since been discouraged. Many deaf and hard of hearing people find this term to be too negative. It makes us sound as if we're broken. And we prefer not to be perceived that way. So those are the terms. We prefer to avoid the term hearing impaired. Hard of hearing to generally describe mild to moderate hearing loss. Deaf to describe severe to profound hearing loss. And spell it with a capital D, even in the middle of a sentence, for those who identify with the culturally deaf community. And hearing loss as a general term for any diminished ability to hear. You can also say hearing disability. That's another useful term.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, because this is important how we address you, so that we may be sensitive to how it makes you feel better when we communicate. So that's really,
Yes, and not just me, but the community.
yes.
To deaf and hard of hearing people in general.
Mhm,
If you want to talk, if you want to refer to people with the hearing loss, then the deaf and the hard of hearing or deaf and hard of hearing people.
mhm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, well, before we dive into this topic, which we have more questions about, tell us a bit about you. Where are you from? And about your story. I remember you posted on LinkedIn. That's where the first time I knew about you. You had an amazing post explaining your situation as a deaf person, and it really touched my heart and also inspired me very much. And I really thank you for being courageous enough to say, hey, this is who I am. And I remember you saying, I don't know if I will remove this post or something. I don't know. You said something like that. Like, I don't know how long will this last, but it's there.
Yeah,
Still...
it was about a situation that I had encountered, an unpleasant situation that I had encountered that involved a lack of accessibility, and which happens frequently to people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So to give a bit of my background, so not everybody is born with a disability, but it can happen to anyone at any age. And some lose their hearing prelingually before they learn to speak. And many lose their hearing postlingually. That is, in late childhood, during their teenage years, or later in adulthood. I was born with normal hearing. When I was 1 year old, I was sick with croup, and I spiked a high fever. We don't know if it was the high fever or the medication that I was given. We will never know. But I stopped responding to my parents' voice and to any noise. And that's when my parents knew something was wrong with my hearing. I was fitted with hearing aids, but it quickly became clear that my right ear was completely deaf. So my right ear is just useful for earrings. And so since I can only hear with a powerful hearing aid in my left ear, I cannot determine the source of a sound. You need both ears to do that. The idea of being in stereo. And I'm not in stereo, I'm mono. Yeah. So there are different types of deafness. It's a spectrum. So if you look at 2 or 3 of us who have severe to profound hearing loss, you will find that we perceive sound differently, we speak differently. Some of us sign, some of us do not, some of us do both. I am more sensitive to high frequency sound. Women's voices are easier for me to understand than male voices. And if someone told me a thunderstorm is approaching, I have to take their word for it. I can't hear thunder until the storm is right here. So my hearing range is like a window. The thunder is beyond the cutoff of the low frequency end. But I can hear the bass in many songs. I can hear male voices, but they are not as clear to me as female voices. Beyond the high frequency cutoff is certain beeps and the chirps of little birds, for example. And that is typical for many people who have some form of hearing loss. It's a window. And the high frequency cutoff that is programmed into my hearing aid help to protect my residual hearing in my left ear, because many of these sounds are uncomfortable for me. A baby screeching or the feedback of a microphone, for example. I'm sharing this aspect with you to point out that deafness is not only about what we cannot hear, but what sound we do hear, but in a distorted and harmful way. And also to highlight to everyone, this is a PSA, a public service announcement, to be very careful in environments with loud noises to protect your hearing. Yeah. Okay, so I have 12 years of speech therapy, which is how I'm able to speak now. My family was instructed to make sure that I could see their face when they spoke to me, so that they would go on their hands and knees, or they would lift me up onto the counter or the table, so that I could be face to face with them. So I can't say that I learned to read lips. It was more of an intentional, intuitive strategy as opposed to something that I formally learned to do.
Mm-hmm.
My family also encouraged me to listen to music. So from an early age, I developed an appreciation for a wide variety of music, from classical and opera. My mother's father would play a lot of opera to me. My other grandfather played a lot of jazz, and my father played a lot of rock music. My mother liked the 1960s and Broadway tunes, things like that. So I developed an appreciation for various types of music as well as electronic and alternative genres over the years with different people saying, "Oh, have you heard this?" Also, music helped me to deal with tinnitus. Tinnitus is very, very common among people with hearing loss. And that is ringing in the ears. It's perceived sound in the ears that's not real, but we think it's real, but nobody else around us can hear it. And so when I'm working, I often need instrumental music in the background playing softly to distract me from the tinnitus. Yeah. So since I have no recollection of normal hearing, I never felt a sense of loss. There was nothing for me to grieve in that respect. But it's important to keep in mind with regard to late deafened people that they go through a grieving process. Most of them, if not all of them, do. And that's something to keep in mind and be sensitive about. Because that's a big change, that's life changing. However, I was aware early on that I was different from the people around me. In school, kids would stare at my hearing aid and ask, "What's that thing in your ear?" Fortunately for me, though, it was always curiosity, and once that curiosity was satisfied, my peers accepted me. The bullying that I have experienced was always from adults. My third grade teacher frequently picked on me, and in retrospect, many years later, it occurred to me that it was likely from fear and insecurity, not really insecurity about himself, but insecurity about how to deal with me, like a lack of information. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have the ability back then to advocate for myself. So it created a very difficult situation in third grade.
Did
Yeah.
sorry, did this inspired you to work on health communication and advocate? Because like I can understand that these negative experiences, let's say, are the platform for maybe starting, let's say, an inspired career even in the future, right? To
Yes.
realize that.
Yes, yes. Eventually it did. It kind of, I went through more experiences that led me to how communication and language accessibility work. Including when I was doing clinical rotation to complete the Doctor of Physical Therapy degree.
It's true. I remember now because we are both physical therapists. And that's another thing that I found like beautiful. It's like, oh, she's a physiotherapist as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, just that I never became a physical therapist. I have the knowledge, I have the academic knowledge,
Mhm.
but I never got the degree because I couldn't complete the program. And why wasn't I able to complete the program? Because one physical therapy clinical supervisor was angry about getting a deaf student. She
Really?
deprived me of the accessibility that I needed to carry out my task, to communicate with the patient, to ensure safety.
Mm.
And she then spoke poorly of me to my professors. And the professors and I suspected that she ran a smear campaign so that no other clinic in the region would accept me to
Wow.
complete the required clinical rotation.
I can't believe this.
As a result, 7 months prior to completing the Doctor of Physical Therapy program, I had no choice but to withdraw. It was a broken dream.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was something I had to grieve. That
Mm.
was a grieving process that I had to go through. And more recently, I was bullied by a pre-doctoral student in my research group who perceived that people are hierarchically lower. In fact, the second deaf woman he has attacked in the department. The first one took a year off from the doctoral program and ultimately decided not to return. And this doctoral program was the Doctor of Translation and Language Sciences, which I am a doctor of. So, yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I bounced back. I bounced back.
What was that person's motivation then for for that, for his attitude towards you?
I don't know. I don't know. I think in that case, I think that was a personal insecurity that he's still there. So I have to take measures to stay away and yeah, to protect myself. Um, but I think in that case it was personal and um not ignorant with regard to my disability.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did this happen because I know you're from North America, you're from the US. You were telling us earlier that you come from New York. You were born in New York, but now you're based in Spain, in Barcelona. Is that right?
Yeah.
This happened in
In
Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the physiotherapy.
The physical therapy incident happened in the United States,
Mhm,
in the
Right.
Washington, D.C. area.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah, where I was living at that time.
mhm.
I mean, if I could disclose something about myself that I haven't begun to disclose until very recently, I'm neurodivergent. I know these days a lot of people are claim to be neurodivergent, and um, but I genuinely am. I'm basically the same neurotype as the Rain Man, if you remember the Rain Man movie. And I've there's been occasions where I've disclosed that in a professional environment, and it has not worked out well against me. It has not worked out well in my favor. So well, I'm disclosing it now to the world, I guess, but it's I mean that's kind of uh, that's something more hidden, I guess. Um, but once I know exactly what you mean, because once disclosed, people change their attitudes towards you. I really have noticed that. And so the solution is not to disclose in my case, but sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes I'm pushed into a corner where I have to say, you know, I'm I'm acting like this because I am of that type, of that neurotype.
Yes,
Thank
it's important to be sensitive to the environment as we go to whether to disclose or not to disclose our disabilities or our differences, and also for other people to be inclusive and not think in a hierarchical level, but rather
right.
in a diversity level, or not
Yes.
even level, on a diversity basis to include everyone and think about, okay, what can each of us contribute to make our world better?
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Because really, well, our organization is called Art of Diversity, and that's the aim, right? To work towards embracing inclusion, diversity, and equity, and well, in this case, mostly in health communication, but in other areas as well. And thank you, Mark, for disclosing this finally. I have disclosed this as well. I'm a neurodivergent person also, and a person with disability. And in my case, it's been also the experience that when I have disclosed that I have MS, chronic fatigue syndrome, disability, I'm neurodivergent. Yeah, I've lost jobs, and I've been treated as less than or a
Yeah,
risk to the company, or as a victim even. And I think it's part of our calling to just help people understand that this is normal, natural, that many more people than we think live like this. But yeah, there's this fear of not disclosing. Sometimes it's not visible, so you can hide it. Like, well, Mark, it's easier for you in the sense of you can try to disclose it or control it so that people don't see that aspect of you. But for others, it's impossible. It's like so evident that you don't even have that choice of regulating when you're ready to disclose that or not. And I really hope, because that's part of what this episode is intended to, is through you, Amy, but also through us, Mark and I, to help people have a voice in this, voice their disability with, let's say, with dignity, with integrity, and just educate others into this and support each other. Really understand that we are a community, and that it's okay if we need more time, or it's okay if we need, like in your case, we need to put captions, we need to try to speak clearly or vocalize. And what's the problem? It's okay. We can do it. It's not that difficult. Or ask you, what do you need first? And then we can all adapt. In my case, for example, in the courses that Mark and I have, and when I'm facing the students, at first I was very stressed because, well, I have cognitive impairment, mild cognitive impairment, but I have it. And that makes me sometimes go blank, or I need to be reading all that I'm saying because I just may absolutely forget what I was trying to say. And I remember at first I didn't say anything. It was horribly stressful. But then I said, I'm going to tell the students this is what happens. And just bring me back if I start, getting lost or something. And the most beautiful thing happened. they were allowed also to not be perfect. They could relax. They could really enjoy learning. And also they shared that they had their own disabilities, illnesses, emotional issues, psychological issues. And it was really beautiful because we all connected from a place of truth and authenticity. And I think we push ourselves too much trying to be perfect and fit where we just don't fit. But we can find our spaces where other people are like us.
Yeah.
And not like us in the sense of having a disability, but like us in the sense of embracing differences. And
Yeah.
yes. So
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes, when people tell me you have this disability, I feel like you have the disability of, this narrow-mindedness. It's a kind of disability. Yes. And this, like this person that you were talking about, well, these two from your physical therapy degree and also from your PhD, that to me, it's a kind of disability. And they also need to be understood in their fears towards us, but it's very
Mm-hmm.
harmful and it's
Yeah, it's
important to voice.
important to shift from a resistant, narrow-minded mindset about people with disability to a more open, curious,
Yeah.
curious in terms of curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
and with the constant question, with the mantra, so to speak, how can I help?
Yeah.
What can I do to improve our communication or to include you,
Mm-hmm.
to make the experience accessible for you? Um, it's important to ask questions as opposed to assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming is harmful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that leads me to one of the questions I had. In the 2000s, I was working quite intensely with older people with sight loss to find out what their information needs are to access information about medicines. And so the received wisdom is Braille. Just have everything on Braille. Just like with you, you said that the people just expect you to be signing and that kind of thing. But with people with sight loss, there's a direct parallel. With what you say with regard to deafness and hearing loss, where people are born with no sight, so therefore it's not sight loss. And then people can lose it in childhood or um, in older years. It's what's happening to me. I'm losing mine because I'm in my 50s and I'm not seeing as well as I did. And that's what a lot of people go through in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And so there are a huge array of needs there. Some people want large print, some people want huge print, some people want audio. And I had a query very recently about producing a clinical outcome assessment in British Sign Language. And I just wonder if that is a similar thing where they're just making assumptions that this is for the deaf community. How else would you think? In it, obviously, British Sign Language is important for a British clinical outcome assessment, but what else do you think should they consider?
They should consider providing captioning because not all deaf and hard of hearing people know sign language. but we know how to read.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So at the very minimum, captioning would make our environment more accessible. It would make
Mm-hmm.
communication more accessible. It would make public service announcement in public transportation station and on the train more accessible.
Right. And I think that's really important. And also, I was setting up my own YouTube channel, basically just doing or attempting to do spoken essays, video essays kind of thing. And I remember in response to a post that you did about captioning, I contacted you for advice about that because even though I would consider myself sensitive to diverse needs, I hadn't considered captioning for the videos, and but you pointed me in the right direction, and I'm going to be doing that. And it's a really simple tweak. It doesn't hardly cost. It doesn't cost anything. Just here we have captions that are automatic. But I don't think it's going to be faithful to my accent, though. I bet when I read it over.
There are limitations to accessibility, and there is always room for improvement.
Mm.
And there are different types of captioning as well. The automatic captioning, what we have now is a big improvement over what we had during the COVID pandemic when everybody was in lockdown. When it was mostly available only in English, and the quality was not as good, not anywhere near as good, and the errors were often quite hilarious if they were legible at all. If they made any sense at all.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I've experimented with mine, and it just gets things so badly wrong. Even with the LLM enabled transcriptions, it still makes mistakes.
Yeah, yes. In physics class, which I had to take before taking the doctorate of physical therapy class, I had a live captioner who used a microphone, a muffled microphone, which she would repeat what the professor said into the microphone, which was connected to her laptop, which converted her voice into the caption. And sometimes the error, now I should mention, she had a very strong Boston accent. And that influenced the error. That may have tripped the error. And so the professor said a little algebra. And the result on the computer was 2 tits and a bra. And I'm looking at the caption and I'm trying not to laugh. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, that sounds like trying to figure out from the context. And I look at the captioner and she is bright red with embarrassment. And the professor noticed that. Now, he had been aware, he was already aware that sometimes errors occur. And so he came around to us to see what we were dealing with. And he read it out to the whole class so that everybody could have a laugh. So, yeah. The
I
quality
think
of even live subtitling, live caption, there's always room for improvement, and we need flexibility and a sense of humor, which we go to that.
I think one of my colleagues in my team is in Guatemala, and we were looking at a transcript of just a meeting that we had with a client, and it there were several instances where it was FUCKU. We were thinking, well, none of us said that. And it was basically just her pronunciation of focused.
Yeah.
several times. So she'll kill me for saying that.
That is
Sorry.
hilarious. That
Yeah.
is hilarious.
That's great.
Yeah, so accent in voice to text can be an issue and that need to be improved.
Mhm.
However, accessibility is improving over time, and the laws are improving as well to bring this to the public
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
enforce the accessibility. There's a
Yeah.
long way to go,
Mm.
but we're moving, and that's what matters.
Mhm.
And the costs are virtually nothing for to enable inclusion, whether it's you know, catering for the needs of people with sight loss. It's really easy to produce. You know, all you have to do is tweak the size of the print, or put the voice on, or any voice you want on it, and it's the same for captioning. It doesn't cost anything, so there's no excuse, in my opinion.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you now, what's your experience with, well, since we specialize in clinical outcome assessments and questionnaires for patients, in this case, PROs, let's say, what's your experience of those questionnaires with like you?
Okay, I should point out that most of my work in medical translation is scientific articles.
Mhm.
And so with linguistic validation, or actually part of that process, the written part of the process with questionnaires
Mhm.
is mostly back translation
Mhm.
from Spanish to English.
Mhm.
Um, and the issues that I come across there have nothing to do with disability, apart from language accessibility and cultural accessibility, cultural adaptation, I prefer to say. Um, and it's mostly a question of whether we are including British patient, North American patient, both.
Mhm.
And so the terminology that we choose in English need to be understood by everyone.
Mhm.
So if we say, for example, day patient, the British would understand that, but we don't say that in the United States.
Mhm.
But outpatient, which is the terminology that's used in the United States, in North America, but would the British understand that?
We starting to. It doesn't resonate though. You know, in hospitals you would see outpatients, but you have to learn what that means.
Mhm.
Whereas I think in the US it's more intuitive.
Yeah. So with terms like that, where there is no universal term, we need to use we need to define it. We need to include a definition or an explanation with the term to make sure that everybody would understand it.
Mm.
Mhm. I wanted to ask you before I forget, because I know you speak 5 languages, or at least you are proficient in 5 languages. And what drove you to learn languages or to have this passion? Because you had passion for physical therapy, and what took you to make this step into languages?
Um, when I was little, I was given a card set, and it was a bilingual flashcard set that had beautiful illustration, and it was Spanish and English.
Mhm.
And the sound of Spanish in my head was really beautiful and different. And as someone who is different, for people who spoke another language, it fascinated me. And so I started studying Spanish in fifth grade, which is younger than most people in North America to study a second language. And I picked it up very quickly so that by my last year of high school, I was in independent studies because I had completely finished all the courses that they provided. So the teacher just created lessons for me to continue. Um, when I went to Oxford in my third year of college, my third year of my first undergraduate degree, I have two undergraduate degrees. So my first undergraduate degree in Oxford, they offered Catalan.
Mhm.
And that's where I started studying Catalan, even though I was exposed to the language through a student exchange program a few years earlier. And I studied French in college for my first undergraduate degree. Now, that was an interesting situation. I went to an unusual college, Caroline College. And that was an unusual college because they don't have large lecture halls. Instead, each course had two components. You participated in a seminar with a small group, up to 15 classmates or 14 other classmates at a round table. Now, round table are wonderful for people with hearing loss, especially for those of us who read lips, because we can see everybody who speaks. And the teacher was really conscious of the fact that I needed to see her when she spoke. So she would write the word on the board, and then she would turn to us and pronounce the word so that I knew what the word looks like and how to pronounce it. And then she hooked me up with another professor in the department who met up with me one-on-one to focus on listening and speaking in French, which was really helpful for me because unlike Spanish, where the words are spelled as they sound, French did not look like the way they pronounce most of the words anyway. So I needed to learn how to pronounce the words and to speak complete sentences properly in French. So the exposure, not just to the languages themselves, but to the different ways to access learning languages, brought me to develop the methodology that I use to teach English as a foreign language for deaf people in Barcelona who are native in Catalan and Spanish. Yeah.
That's brilliant. When going back to when you were doing the first Catalan course, can you remember the textbook that you did? Because I bet we did the same one.
I'm trying to diggy.
Diggy Diggy, yeah, and
Yes.
and there's a British one by it was just called Teach Yourself Catalan that was written in the 70s or 80s or things like that. But it was a good one. But Diggy Diggy, yeah, I did that.
So you
Yeah.
speak Catalan, French, Spanish, English, of course. And what's the fifth one?
Well, actually, the fifth one was my second language, and that was Hebrew.
Hebrew.
Right,
All
right,
right. All right.
right.
Yeah.
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 Do
So
you have
actually, my first word when I was a baby was Yiddish.
Mhm.
Yes, because my great grandmother only spoke Yiddish.
Wow.
Mm.
I was going to ask you about Yiddish, because I'm really interested in um, sort of like offshoots of German, like Luxembourgian and Yiddish as well. And I'd I'd learned Yiddish, and I was in just waiting for the ferry in Dumbo in Brooklyn, and there was a group of young girls who were speaking. I thought, well, what variety of German is that? And I realized it was Yiddish, and I was amazed that I didn't realize it had so much vitality, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, there's a lot of humor in the
Mm,
language.
mm,
There's a lot of humor, and some it's like a mixture of different languages of influences
mhm,
in the language
mm,
between German and Slavic languages.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's just been so influential in US vernacular as well, just wider um slang, I guess. People
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
Mm,
New York English,
yeah.
especially.
Mm.
Yes. If you've watched Seinfeld,
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of Yiddish in
Yeah.
Seinfeld, and that's New York English.
Mm-hmm.
There are words that we use in English in New York that the rest of the country did not pick up on until Seinfeld came out. And
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden, everybody was using these terms. Everybody knew what schlep meant, what it means to
Yeah.
schlep something from one place to another. As
Mm.
opposed to carrying something, to
Mhm.
schlep
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
it
yeah,
carries more weight and
yeah.
it carries more emotion. And yeah.
And so for in your family, Hebrew was more dominant than Yiddish.
Mm, in the later generation.
Right, right,
Yeah. So my great grandparents and my grandparent generation, it was Yiddish, more Yiddish.
right,
Um, I am a second generation American.
right.
Yeah. So my great grandparent immigrated to the States, and one grandmother immigrated to the States. Um, she adapted very quickly to English, but
Mm,
she was also fluent in Russian.
right.
But she didn't want anyone in the family to learn Russian. She wanted to just put all of her past behind her.
Mm,
So the older generation spoke to each other in Yiddish when they didn't want the rest of us to understand them.
But you did. Eventually, you did.
Yes. Yeah. So Yiddish is like a combination of German and Slavic languages and Hebrew.
Mhm.
So as I learned more Hebrew, I was able to suss out some of the Yiddish words. And sometimes I played with one of my thesis directors, one of my PhD thesis directors, because he was German.
Mhm.
I would try a Yiddish word on him, and sometimes he understood it, and sometimes he didn't.
I think it.
So I would realize, oh, that word had Slavic root.
Yeah. Yes, and also I think because I think it depends on the region of Germany where the person would have been from, because I think I see a lot of similarities between Yiddish and Luxembourgian and Rhinish as well, like around the Cologne area, um, and even Swiss German. There's similarities there that I perceive anyway as a foreign learner. So it's fascinating, really. I think it's a language that needs to survive, and I was just delighted as I said, there's so much vitality in the Brooklyn area in particular.
Yeah, yeah. There are complete communities that speak only in Yiddish.
Mhm.
And which brings me to a health communication story. about the accessibility of language in public health announcement during the COVID pandemic, when we needed to get the information to ultra-Orthodox community in New York, in Montreal, in London, and other parts of the world, including in Israel and other parts of Europe.
Buenos Aires as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't just a matter of translation, it was also a question of cultural adaptation.
Yes, yeah.
Because when it came to the infographic,
Mm.
what type of illustration would be culturally acceptable? What would be acceptable and what would be offensive?
I think, and when you talk about penetration of messaging, it was public health, because I did a real deep dive about this across the world about COVID messaging, and there were certain pockets where there was just no penetration whatsoever, and one of them was like Somalis in London, for example. Still, there were a lot of Somali taxi drivers were driving around, streets deserted, no idea what was happening. And Orthodox Jews as well around the world in terms of public gatherings and things like that. And just the reach of the messaging completely failed with them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, because in the ultra-Orthodox communities, it is traditional to have very large weddings, and their gathering would be it would put them at risk, and then they get exposed to the virus. They bring the virus home to their large family, and then everybody would get sick. So yeah, so it's really important to get the messages to them by translating, culturally adapting the message. Yeah. And there was a situation here in Barcelona with the Filipino community.
Right.
Where the Barcelona Public Health Department wanted to run a public testing in the North Raval, where there's a large Filipino community, and hardly anybody came because there was a lot of fear. Some of these people didn't have papers.
Yeah.
Some of these people needed to work to pay the bill, so if they tested positive, they wouldn't be able to go to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big fail. And fortunately for the public health department, they examined what happened to identify the errors and figure out, okay, what do they need to do to reach the community? And when it came to vaccination, they produced the information in Tagalog, in the language, the Filipino language. And they provided a time frame that would work for the majority of the community. They checked everything with the key informers of the community, and then they promoted the vaccination, and it was a huge success. Everybody got vaccinated.
Because the community, it was co-designed with the community engagement and that kind of thing. That's it. And a lot of health communication during COVID in an acute crisis, just like with a hurricane or an earthquake or anything like that, it's reactive, and you have to develop these messages really quickly, and very often it bypasses the community. So there's the idea of pre-testing, so pre-developing emergency messages. Obviously, you can't predict a COVID from happening, but you could have similar messaging in place that can be adapted and that is already tested with people. And that's what one of the biggest learnings of COVID was.
Yeah, yes. And then so it's language accessibility, cultural adaptation, and also accessibility for people with disability.
Mm-hmm.
So in the case of COVID, how are deaf people supposed to lip read when
Yeah,
everybody's wearing a mask?
yeah, yeah. It was a problem.
Yeah.
A
That was
huge.
a
Yeah,
nightmare.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I remember just having a tiny insight into that because during just right at the end of COVID, when you could fly and things, and everybody, the mask mandates were still in. And I went to Guatemala. I have an office in Guatemala, and my Spanish is fluent. Noor might disagree about that, but I found the mask really disabling. I couldn't. I had to really concentrate about what people were saying.
Mhm.
And yeah, like I said, it's just a tiny insight into what it must have been like.
yeah, yeah. So that was one of the drivers of the development of transcription apps in a
Mm-hmm.
cell phone or
Mm-hmm.
mobile phone, as
Mm-hmm.
we say in the UK.
Mhm.
And that continued to improve as well. The use of transcription apps in one language or from one language to another these apps have been a godsend
Mm-hmm.
for people with hearing loss.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, yes. A lot of people in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when I was dealing with the math barrier, would just pull out a paper and a pen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was how we communicated. I would speak, and they would write.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
Um,
But
just to bring us to wrap up because we need to. Sorry, I interrupted you, Mark. I wanted to ask you, well, we have been maybe seeing this through our conversation, but like the idea of creating awareness and inclusion, especially in patient voice research, and what can we do and what do we need to know in order to not to exclude but integrate people with sensory disability more? How can we educate ourselves? If just in a nutshell, let's say, what would you suggest, Amy?
Okay, that's a very important question because it's very important to include people with disability to ensure that the results truly are applicable to them. Yeah, if you know that they are deaf or hard of hearing, contact them in writing. Ask them when you first contact them about their preferred communication method and accessibility requirements. In general, when you're with people with the hearing loss, a quiet, well-lit environment is ideal. No background noise, and avoid backlighting. For example, if the sun is shining through the window and you have your back to that window and you have the deaf person facing you, your face is going to be dark. It's going to be difficult for them to read your lip. So make sure that you're not backlit.
Mhm.
All presentations and video calls should have captioning. And if it's a group setting, a round table is ideal. Also set a rule that one person speaks at a time. And make sure that the deaf or hard of hearing person, is able to identify who is speaking from the outset. For example, you can pass a pen or a microphone around, and that visual cue for the deaf or hard of hearing person is easy to follow so that they can follow group discussion more easily. You can also use your tablet or laptop or phone with the transcription app to facilitate communication.
Wonderful. And well, we'll keep all that in mind, and of course we'll do it. And just to finish, unless you have something else you want to add, Mark, before the last question I would like to ask Amy.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, well, we will really have many things to ask her, but we need to finish now. But maybe some other time we can have another conversation. What message do you have? Like, what would you say to other colleagues with sensory disability? How would you encourage them so that they may not feel limited and really embrace all their gifts, and as you have done, and be let's say an agent of change for the better in patient
Don't let
voice?
anybody else tell you what you can and cannot do. That's for you to decide. And it's important to educate the ignorant one. And for every bully, there are 10 empathetic people. So overall, it's important to take care of yourself, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. So if you need to take a mental break and it's not provided for you, you have to create one yourself. And that's something that is not often mentioned for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, the mental fatigue that we deal with when it comes to communicating for long periods of time. We do need a break.
That's what I was
Yeah.
wondering. Like, the conversation keeps going, and you have to read all the captions and wait and read our lips and then answer. And there's a small delay as well. So that may be cognitively burdensome. So yeah, thank you for raising that. And yeah, continue. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, so bottom line, don't let anybody else tell you what you can and cannot do.
That's great advice, really, for everyone.
There just may be a different way that you can do it, but there is a way.
Well, Amy, really thank you. You're an example of empowerment, inspiration, and also, let's say, empathy and compassion. And really, your example, I hope, inspires a lot of people. It's inspiring us, and it will keep inspiring. So we will follow closely your research and anything you do, really. And I hope we can collaborate in many projects and
that would be wonderful.
Future endeavors. Yes.
I'm really pleased that I've finally spoken to you, because I've been following you for some time, and I really like your posts as well.
Thank you. Thank you. The admiration is mutual.
Yeah.
What, you like my posts as well, do you? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. And I think you have some articles, right, Mark, in relation to sensory disability or something about visuals, and I don't know if
Yeah, but those are more about the visuals in electronic, like clinical outcome assessments and that kind of thing.
Well, maybe we will be seeing some articles in relation to sensory disability and furthering this conversation, I'm sure. And well, really, you're always welcome here in this space, Amy, and we really hope to have you again many times.
It's been a
And
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
thank you so much for coming. And I hope that this small conversation may bring some support to the deaf and hard of hearing people in the world, let's say. Well, see you in the next episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us. Thank you, Mark, as always. And have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Culture, Communication and Care Spotlight with Mark Gibson and Ferrante. Stay connected by visiting our website artofdiversity.org and by subscribing to the Patient Voice and Linguistic Validation Café YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share about us with your community on social media. Thank you. We appreciate your support.